Hi everyone, and welcome to Platypus Digital's webinar. Today we're going to talk about Google Analytics. I'm just going to dive straight into it. So measurement is key in all digital activities, so knowing the basics of Google Analytics and web analytics platforms is really important for anyone doing anything digital. What we're going to cover today, we only have half an hour, so this is going to be an overview of the absolute fundamentals of Google Analytics with some signposting at the end to some more details and useful resources for you to look at. Some of you in our survey asked us to look at things like dashboards. I'll do an overview of that today, but we're not going to have time to go into that in depth. But we will show you some other resources that you can look at. And there'll be time for questions at the end too. If you want to just type them in the box as we go along, and we will have 15 minutes for questions at the end. So why analytics? Having analytics in place is hugely important for any business, whether you're a charity or not. And analytics platforms like Google Analytics allow you to see data about your website visitors. And at the most basic level, you can see who's visiting your website, where they're coming from, and what they're doing on your website. So in summary, analytics allow you to know whether your digital marketing efforts are effective, know which digital channels are performing the best. You can look at trends over time, get supporter insights as well, and maybe most importantly, identify areas for improvement. Google Analytics is the most widely used web analytics platform for charities. It's free and pretty easy to use once you're set up with it and you know your way around. There are other web analytics platforms out there, but this webinar will focus on Google Analytics. So the first thing to note with Google Analytics is that it is never 100% accurate. You might ask why. So there's a few reasons. Cookies have to be accepted, or people might be in incognito mode or be blocking cookies or have a firewall that are blocking cookies. So that's one reason why Google Analytics won't collect data. Another reason is it might be the same device with a different user. By that I mean I might log on to a public computer in the library, and then I might visit your website, and then someone else might come along to that same computer and visit your website from that computer. That is two different people, but Google Analytics doesn't know that it's two different people. And it works the other way around as well. So it can be the same user on a different device. So I might visit your website today on my laptop, and then later on my way home, I might look at it again from my iPhone. And Google doesn't always know whether that's one person. And the other way is with sampling and time lag. So Google Analytics sometimes samples data, and it's not always completely real-time up to date. There are some real-time statistics that you can get, but it's safer to assume that there's a 24-hour time lag with Google Analytics. And another reason, which is a little bit more technical, is that Google Analytics relies on JavaScript. So if that's not enabled, then Google Analytics won't collect any data. So what can we actually learn from looking at Google Analytics? We'll take a look at the platform itself in a minute, but first it's really important to understand the basics of what we can look at and where to find that. So the platform itself is split into tabs, which is a screenshot of here. And the ones we're going to look at today mainly are audience, acquisition, and behavior. And put simply, audience is looking at who is visiting your website. So you can see things like demographics, geography, interests, and what devices people are using. Acquisition is where people are coming from or how are they getting to your website. So they might have clicked a link from a Facebook post or been referred from another website. And then behavior, and I've put conversions in here too because it's kind of related, is what people are actually doing on your website. Which pages are they visiting? How long are they spending looking at them? So remembering this who, where, and what analogy can kind of help you when you're first looking at Google Analytics for where to find certain pieces of information. So if you're looking for things about what devices people are using, then you're going to look at your audience tab. So let's dive straight into it. I'm just going to pause a minute while I get analytics up. So I'm using Google's sort of demo analytics account here. So it's the Google Merchandise Store, and that's available to anyone. So if you want to have a play with Google Analytics, you can use this. So when you log in, you land on this Home tab, and that just gives you a summary of some of the information that Google thinks is appropriate. So the first thing to look at, I'm just going to click into the first tab, Audience here, and I'm going to go to Overview. The first thing, and I'm always forgetting to do this, is to check the date range. Just make sure that you're looking at the date range that you want to be looking at for whatever data you're trying to get. I'm just going to leave it as it is, but just to note that there's an option here to compare to a previous period as well. So you can set whichever period you want and then compare that to the period before that. And you can also enter a custom comparison period. There you go. So now you can see the two pieces of data for the two periods. I'm just going to turn that off for now so that it's simpler. So the audience section, there's a lot of information in here. Not all of it is as useful as other bits of data. So the overview tab shows you, again, basic information. There's an overview tab on each of these different sections. So you can see basic information about your users, new and returning visitors, number of new sessions and page views here. You can also see things like bounce rate and how long people are spending. But the real insights come from these sort of deeper tabs. The ones I'm going to look at now are geography. This one can be a really useful one. So if you just open that up and click location, that will show us basically a map of the world. Here we go. So on this website, a lot of people are coming from America, and it's sort of color coded so you can see where most users are coming from. If you scroll down, you can see a breakdown of all the countries and various metrics for each of those countries. I'm just going to click into United Kingdom now, so we can just see United Kingdom data. And so that shows us a map of the UK, and then it's broken down by country. But that's not necessarily very useful, so you might want to look at cities. So we can click here. And that then breaks it down by cities. So you can see here that most people coming to this website are in London. This can really help you know where your visitors are coming from, so it can inform other activities that you're doing. The other most useful section in here is mobile. So this will tell you what devices people are actually using when they're visiting your website. So we can see here a basic breakdown on the overview of desktop, mobile and tablet. So that's really useful information to see. But you can also go a little bit deeper than that and look at specifically what devices are the most popular on your website. So here we can see iPhone is the top one for this one, followed by iPads. So that can be really useful for knowing what devices you should be testing your website on and checking that your user experiences are all working on those top devices. So there are other, as you can see, other pieces of data here that you can look at, demographics and interests and things like that. But we would recommend not to look at those too much because not all the data is as accurate as it can be. Google only knows what it knows. It doesn't know everything about people. So maybe interesting to look at, but probably best not to base any decisions on those ones. So the next tab is our acquisition tab. So if you remember, that's where people are coming from or how they're getting to your website. Again, there's an overview here. You can see a breakdown of all of the different channels that people are coming from. and various other things. But again, the real insights come when you go a little bit deeper. So I'm just going to go into all traffic and channels. So you can see a breakdown of all of the different sources here. Actually, they're mediums. That's wrong. I will explain the difference between source and medium in a moment. So you can see here, the top one here is organic search, followed by, so that's people searching on Google, followed by direct. So that's people coming directly to the URL, typing it into their browser. Referral, that's refers to other websites. So I might have linked from another website that's linked here. Social is your social media. Display is display advertising. Paid search is usually your Google ads, but also can be Facebook ads as well, depending how you track that. So I really like source medium. I think it's one of the most useful things you can look at in Google Analytics. So I've just clicked that on the left there. And you can see all of the metrics broken down by the different source and mediums. So the source here is Google. That is basically the specific place that someone came from. And the medium is the more general channel, so organic. And you can see here, you can also have Google as the source and CPC, which means cost per click. So that's your paid advertising as the medium. And that could also work, that could also say Facebook CPC. There are also other various things you can look at in this section. We'll go into a little bit more detail later, but just to note, you can look at if you've got an AdWords account connected, you can see data within here. Search console, that's basically all of your organic search traffic coming from Google. Within here, you can look at queries, so that's what people are actually typing in to get to your website. And that can be really useful to inform what people are actually searching for and what's bringing them in, and whether you could maybe create some more content or adapt content for that. And you can also see landing pages and other things like that in here. So just going back to source medium again. So I'll cover this in a bit more detail, and there are some links for you to do this later, but your source medium, you can actually tell Google what to put in there by using UTM tagging. That basically adds parameters onto the end of your URLs, which means tells Google Analytics to collect that data and show you where people are coming from. If we've got time at the end, I will cover that in a little bit more detail. So now looking at the behavior tab, I really like this one. This is my favorite tab in Google Analytics. And it's when I was working in-house in charities, this is where I spent most of my time looking at Google Analytics. So I'm going to go to site content and all pages here. So here we can see at the most basic overview of this, it's sorted by page views. So that's the number of times this page has been viewed. So the home page has been loaded 20,976 times, and it automatically sorts it by that. And just to note, on all of these and in the previous sections we've looked at, we can actually sort these. So if I wanted to see the lowest page views, I could do that. So there you go. And one thing to note as well is page views versus unique page views. So page views is just the total number. Unique ones is talking about individual users or sessions that are loading that page. So that's always going to be lower than your page views. I'm just going to click onto the home page now and show you how to add secondary dimensions. So you just click here, and basically, let's say I want to know where people are coming from to land on my home page. So I'm going to select source medium under acquisition. what that will do is it will add a second dimension, which is basically a description, and then it will show me all of the metrics for those dimensions broken down. So here I can see from my homepage, people coming there mainly through organic search, but also some people are coming directly, and about the same amount are coming through my Google ads. And then there's a few others here that you can see, so referrals from YouTube and other partner websites. So here, you can also, this is really useful to look at which sources are actually giving you the best engagement. So you might want to look at the average time spent on the page. You can see here that people coming directly to the website are spending much more time than people coming organically. So that suggests that these people know they want to go to this website and they're engaged with it and spending more time on it. Equally, that could mean other things. It could mean people are struggling to find what they're looking for. So it's worth just applying a little bit of common sense to these things. You can also see the bounce rate. That can be a really useful one when you're looking at campaign landing pages. Generally, you'll see higher bounce rates through things like Facebook ads and lower ones through organic search. And that's definitely reflected here. So that's quite low there. And again, I can sort by that was the exit rate, so I can sort by the bounce rate here. A lot of them are going to have 100%, so I'm just going to turn that the other way around. And our lowest bounce rate, and there's a lot of zeros, so you may have to do a little bit of filtering here and searching. Just to note, you can also type things in this box, which makes it really easy to find things. We can also see landing pages here, as I just mentioned. So again, you could find your top landing pages and see where people are coming from. And there's all sorts of things you could learn. I can't cover them all in this half hour. Cool, so the next thing to look at is site search. I think this is really interesting. So if you've got an internal search on your website, which is basically searching the content just on your website, you can actually see what people are looking for. This can be really useful to identify content gaps or most sought after pages, or maybe learn which pages people are maybe struggling to find and that you should be putting directly on your homepage or making easier to find. So you can look here at the search terms people are using and just general usage statistics. Again, I won't go into too much detail here, but that's worth having a look if you're interested. Events is another really useful thing. And it allows us to track additional things that Google Analytics doesn't track by itself. So things like scrolling through a carousel on your homepage, downloading a document. So you can actually set these up, you have to set them up yourself, and your developers, web developers, can help you with that. So events are basically made up of categories, actions, and labels. This site is obviously an e-commerce site, so most of their events are going to be based around that. So if I click into event actions, I can see that most of these are going to be based around adding things to your cart, clicking on a product, removing things from the cart, etc. And your label, that can be whatever you want it to be, but here, what makes most sense in this context is the actual product names. So that can give you some really useful insights into what people are actually doing on your site. For charities, these are mostly going to be document downloads, and things like that. They're just going to tell you more about what people are doing. So that is events. I'm now going to just go directly onto the conversions tab. So for anyone who's really new to digital, a conversion is basically something that you want people to do on your website usually. So this is a really important tab. The most common way to track conversions is through goals. So I'm just going to go into the overview of the goals here. So here you can see you need to set up goals yourself as well. So again, I'm not going to go into how to do that today, but if you've got questions at the end, we can maybe have a look at that. So, sorry, wrong one. So here we can see all of the goals that are set up on this website and this analytics account. And again, they're very e-commerce focused. For a charity, this is going to be probably around donating. So you'll probably have some donation goals set up. So I'm just going to have a look at this one. And that basically shows me how many times that goal has been achieved and other information about it, conversion rates and things like that. The thing to note about goals is that you have a maximum of 20 if you're using the standard Google Analytics package. So yeah, you do have a limit on how many you can use. So it's good to just bear that in mind, especially if lots of different teams are using analytics. The other thing to note about them is that they can't look retrospectively. So if I was to set up a new goal today, it won't be able to look at any historical data. It will only look at data going forward from now. So the best way to set up a goal for a donation, for instance, is to have a thank you page that people get redirected to once they've successfully donated. Not all websites have the ability to do this, but if you do have the ability, this is the best way to set up goals. You then create a URL goal, and then it will count a goal every time someone hits that thank you page. So here they've done it as order completed, which is basically the equivalent for an e-commerce store. You can also set up goals using events, which I won't go into now, but that just is another way that you can do that. And there are other various ways as well, but goals and events, URL goals and events are the most common way for charities. And there's other sections in here. E-commerce tracking is really important for your donation tracking. And there's various other more advanced things in here, which I won't go into now. One really useful thing about Google Analytics, which you can apply across the whole, whatever tab you're looking at, is segments. So these are basically filters, so you can filter, so you can only looking at specific groups of users on your website. There are presets, or you can build your own ones. So here I could just go add a segment, and there's all of these ones which are preset or that somebody has created. If I wanted to create a new one, I just go new segment, and then let's say I want to see only people who are coming via CPC on Facebook. I'll just call that Facebook CPC and save it. There we go. So now I'm just looking at people who have come in from Facebook CPC. Obviously, there's nobody on here because they are Google. They're probably not doing Facebook ads. But you can compare different segments and you can just remove them and it will go back to all users. So segments are really good because when you're looking at dimensions, you can only add one secondary dimension onto, say, when we're in the behavior all pages tab. So in any of these, I can only add one secondary dimension. So what segments allow me to do is actually get a little bit more granular and a little bit more detailed in what I'm looking at. So that is segments. Again, there's so much more about them that I could say, but we don't have time today. The final thing that I want to look at today is dashboards. That's within the customization tab. You can do reports and other things, but I'm just going to look at dashboards. So dashboards are a really good way of capturing data in a really visual way and in a really easy to understand way. So you don't have to spend hours looking through Google Analytics. You can actually just have a dashboard and just look at it whenever you want to. So here are some ones that have been set up within this account. I'm just going to go into the e-commerce one to show you an example. So here we can see the overall e-commerce conversion rate, how many transactions there have been, and other really useful things that they want to know at the touch of a button. You can create these quite easily. Again, I don't have time to show you how, but it's really simple. Just create, I always select blank canvas, create dashboard, and then you basically add widgets, which are made up of dimensions and metrics, and you can have all of these different types here. And you can also add segments to dashboards. So again, if you've got a generic campaign dashboard and you want to look at it for a new campaign, you can just change the segment to be looking at the campaign that you're running and that you want to look at. So going back to our slides, just to recap, so Google Analytics is really great for learning about your website users, who, where, and what are they doing on your website. You can stay up to speed on how well your digital activities are going. You can find out what's working well and not so well on your site, and critically identify areas for improvement. Here are some useful things. I talked about UTM tagging earlier. Sort of went over that very quickly, but Google's URL campaign builder is really useful for easily creating tagged URLs to help with your tracking. We really like Avinash Kaushik's blog. He works at Google and he's always got some really interesting insights, so check that out. And he's also written a book called Web Analytics 2.0. Again, really good read if you're really interested in analytics. So homework, this is optional. If you want to go and put into practice what you've heard today, have a go at this. So try looking at the last month in Google Analytics. What was your most visited page apart from the home page? What was the most commonly used device? And which source had the lowest bounce rate? And if you're feeling really brave, try setting up a dashboard to display the above metrics, or maybe just some metrics that you are going to find really useful in your day-to-day work. I'm going to have a look at questions now, so I'm just going to come out of this. So we have a few questions. Let's have a look. Nigel's asked, can I use Google Analytics for Facebook pages, or is there a Facebook equivalent? So probably two bits to this answer. There is a Facebook equivalent for looking at the way people have interacted with your Facebook page and your Facebook posts. That's called Facebook Insights, and that comes with your page. So you should be able to look at that. But the other thing to say is that you want to track what people are doing once they've come from Facebook to your website. And that's where UTM tagging and making sure that's all set up correctly is really useful in Google Analytics. You can look at that source medium, see where people are coming from, and whether people from Facebook are actually interacting with your website afterwards. I hope that makes sense, Nigel. So Joseph has asked, what's the difference between page views and entrances? So page views are basically, it just counts every time the page is loaded. That's a page view. Entrances is when people are coming onto the website on that page. So it's a little bit like a landing page in a way, not quite, but it's, yeah, so entrances is where people have actually entered on that page. And page views is just how many times that page has been viewed. What does bounce rate mean? Asked Cheryl. Bounce rate, yes, sorry, I should have explained this. Bounce rate is basically how many people have come onto that page and then immediately left without looking at anything else on your website. So bounce rate can be really useful to know whether maybe you're running some Facebook ads for donations. Looking at the bounce rate might tell you that people are actually not really engaging with the landing page if it's high, or that if it's really low, then that means people are engaging with it. They're going on to do other things on your website and hopefully donating if it was a Facebook ad example. And shows us, could you repeat why goals are better to set up than just seeing on the behavior? I think I know what you mean here, Sho. So goals basically allow you to, it collects that data for you. So you could go in, I could just type in /thank you into the all pages section, but that's not very easy. It means I have to go through a few levels. So having a goal allows you to count that really easily, but also it will show you the goal conversion rate. So it will sort of compare how many people are starting that goal and finishing it. So you can get a lot more insight through goals. And CDC Local has asked, can a website have multiple users on Google Analytics, or do you need to share logins? You can, so as an agency, we can have access to other people's Google Analytics. So as long as you've got a Google account, you can give access to people on Google Analytics. And you can set different levels of access. So if you want someone to just be able to view things and not actually edit anything, then that's possible, and it can go right up to admin level. So yes, you can have multiple users. Nigel has asked, given the level of inaccuracy in things like individual users, are there any standard statistical corrections that are used to convert to a more realistic figure? I'm not going to go into the answer to this now, Nigel, but perhaps we can go into that later and maybe we can have a chat about that. And Liz has asked, what is an acceptable bounce rate, or is this not a good measure anymore? It really depends, I think, is the answer to that. You've got to set a baseline for what's true for you. But also if it's really high, then like, 99%, then there's probably something that you need to look at. It really depends on the source. So organic bounce rates are going to be a lot lower than paid ones, for instance. And Neil has asked, this is a great question, tips for getting non-digital or comms people into Google Analytics. This is a really tough one. I don't understand personally because I really love Google Analytics. I think it's amazing. You can find so much information from it. Getting people excited about it, I think if you just show them what's possible, yeah, make a dashboard as you suggest, show them what they can see from it, and maybe hold a little meeting at work, try and show people how it works, share your knowledge. I think that's the best way. If you're enthusiastic for it, then that's got to be contagious. And somebody's asked what UTM tagging is. Got a little bit of time, so I will spend some time on this. So basically, hopefully I'm going to explain this simply enough for you. I'm just going to open up this tagging tool here. So basically here, you can see there's some boxes. So I can put in a website URL here. I'm just going to put in our website there. So that's your basic URL. Then let's say that I am doing a Facebook post, just a Facebook post from my campaign, so from my page, so I'm not paying for it. My source then will be Facebook because that's the more specific part, and the medium is going to be social just because it's just normal social media, not paid social media or anything like that. So that's the most basic thing. If I want to know whether when people click on that link now, it will be tagged with Facebook and social, so I'll know they came from that Facebook posts, but you won't know the specific posts. So I can add more specific information such as campaign name. So let's say you're doing a Christmas appeal, and this is a social media post for your Christmas appeal. You just want to put something that is going to be relevant to that. And the key thing to note here is to be consistent in everything you do on this. Otherwise you'll end up with all sorts of different sources and mediums and campaign names. So it's really good to set up maybe a spreadsheet with your colleagues and agree a way of doing these and make sure that everyone follows that. I'm going to leave it as that for now, but I could fill in things like campaign terms. So this is kind of based on Google AdWords, where you'd put your keywords and things like that. But if you're doing something on Facebook, you might put like a Facebook ad, you might use your ad set name there, and then your ad content if you're doing some testing in there. But at its most basic level, that will then create a URL at the end here. And you can see in here that it's got Facebook here as the source, the medium is social, and the campaign is Christmas appeal. What that will do then is within Google Analytics, obviously it won't work on this website, but what I can do is within acquisition, source medium, that will then come up like this. So if I'd done that for a Google CPC, that would be how that appears there. And then what I can add is the campaign. You'll notice that I filled in the campaign here as a Christmas appeal. So you can actually find that. You can just type in, there it is. And so what that would do is it would show me, if it was that one that I'd just done, it would be Facebook, social, and then the campaign would be Christmas appeal. So then you can see immediately what people are doing on your website, what the bounce rates and all of those really useful metrics are. I hope that answers your question. But again, if you want to know more, we can chat in more detail offline. So Anna's asked, are time on page and session duration reliable and accurate statistics? Yes, I think is the short answer to that. Time on page can be really useful just for knowing what, how long people are spending, and that might tell you something about your content. And yeah, it's timed from when they come to the website until they leave. So the one thing to note with it though is that, so a session is basically, without going into too much detail about how Google does this, a session is basically any 30-minute session on your website. So if I came onto your website now, opened it, but then left it for more than 30 minutes, it would be one session within 30 minutes. But if I then came back an hour later, it would then count me as 2 sessions. So there's a little bit of inaccuracy in that, yeah, people might come and go and it can't really distinguish between those, but generally, yeah, they're definitely accurate things to look at. Just seeing if there's any further questions. That is all of them. So if nobody has any other questions, we will end our webinar. So there's your homework again. If you did want to have a look at it, I'll just leave that up for a few seconds for you to take screenshots or do what you want to do with it. And that's it. Thank you everyone for attending, and we will see you next week for Facebook ads.